going to get you an additional 85 horsepower at the wheels. Now, one of the cool things about the Whipple is that the front pulley is interchangeable. With this 3.5-inch pulley, it's going to get us somewhere around 13. With this swapped-in engine clattering and making not so healthy noises, it was time to go. And Kevin and I have both been anxious to ditch the slush pipe interference supporting hardware. So to counter that, we're going to be installing a fuel tank at the very back of the frame, instead of the mid-frame mounted stock plastic tank made by it. But before we do that, we got to figure out the rear suspension. Now, we wanted to do a little bit better than just some lowering blocks of shackles and really enhance the handling capabilities of this project. And there's lots of aftermarket front suspension and doing a custom one-off setup. We wanted to go with more of a subframe system for the rear, and we've got a killer option. This is an IRS from a Cobra Mustang. Ford introduced the Cobras in '99, but this one is from an '04 with the beefed up 31 spline camshafts, limited slip differential, and was a little bit wounded, and these bike tires weren't exactly hooking up. Help the axle live. Now we're stripping the front suspension down just for the sake of getting it to a fair frame. That way we can set the frame at ride height and work the front and rear suspension separately. Now there aren't any off-the-shelf bolt-in kits whose primary focus is to get the truck to handle better. They're mainly designed to sit the truck lower down for
Oh, fuck.
But I guess that's expected since nobody really
This was not ready.
road course. So we're going to be on our own, completely custom front suspension to handle. Well, we've got the frame of Project Rolling Thunder just about completely stripped down in preparation for some pretty serious suspension modifications. But before we cut off the first bracket or even make the first weld, we wanted to point something out. Check this out. Which is only going to amplify the problem. Now, to remedy it, we've got a couple of things we're going to do. We're going to add some bracing, and we're going to weld some of these cross members that are currently just riveted in place, like this one. Really make this truck handle having adjustability on all four corners. Not to mention the fact that some negative camber on the back end of a pickup truck. Well, it's not something you see every day. And take a closer look at the front wheel well. We've located batteries. Rusty's off-road battery box is laser cut from 1/8-inch stainless steel, meaning you never have to worry about corrosion issues, making it great even for marine applications. It's got 8 mounting holes. All right, we've got rear spring hangers and shock nuts not loose from the frame. But before we remove this front spring hanger, we want to make sure this is tack welded together and nice and solid. If you take a closer look, you can see this front frame half and rear frame half overlap and are attached at this point. IRS has a handling advantage right off the bat, but it gets better because it's tunable. And just like the front suspension, there's an upper and lower control arm, with the upper having an adjustable eccentric, which allows you to change the camber setting or the tilt in of the wheel and tire at the top. Now, another tuning point on this system is the adjustable tie rod, which gives you a toe-in adjustment and helps you really control the way a vehicle tracks with the system on it. Now, that happens on final assembly, so you're really early there to take up any slack that may have been created by eliminating the rubber bushing. So for now, this is going to serve us very well, and I've got a few more of these things to do. All right, with the subframe blown apart and the frame but before we do that, we've got to notch the frame for control on clearance. Once we do that, we'll box in the remaining section of the frame rail and add the necessary gussets. Now, the benefits of having these brackets at the frame or even inboard of the frame is that it allows us to remove the goofy flex, which are billet aluminum and pine jointed for adjustability of sway bar preload. The stock CV half shafts, well, there's nothing wrong with them, but we medium blasted them and threw a coat of paint on. They're good to go. The upper, which get replaced by these lightweight, hard anodized billet aluminum rods, again, with pine joint ends that are bump steer adjustable. Now, all of these pieces will virtually eliminate any disrupt is going to get hammered on. Now, it doesn't make any sense to do all these chassis upgrades along with a supercharged high horsepower engine and not pay attention to the brakes, because trust me, we want this thing to stop. So out back, we're using EBC's increasing torque capacity. And the pressure plate features aircraft-grade billet aluminum and a heat-treated and replaceable friction surface. It also features their patented ball-bearing activated diaphragm and standard center force centrifugal weight system. That'll increase clamping load as RPM increases while still maintaining reasonable pedal pressure. Now, the aluminum flywheel we picked up is from center force as well. And with the we can get that second measurement we needed. And it goes from the bell housing to transmission mating surface to the very top point of the fingers, clutch fingers to operate properly. Now for our application, we ended up using the provided spacer sleeve. Now the two O-rings and the throw-out panel are a snug fit, so if you need to, lubricant them with brake fluid only. One final measurement will verify you're still right on the money. That's it. Cool. And last but not least, we can install the bell housing. Hopefully for the last time. Well, Project Rolling Thunder is going to be one seriously fast little street truck with a rock-solid foundation that handles like a slot car. Part of creating that foundation involves boxing the frame all the way back. Now, boxing a chassis in is nothing new. There's really nothing new under the sun. This has been done for years, and it's quite a simple process. It involves using cardboard for templating, tracing out your design, transferring it to metal, and then trimming it out and welding it in place. It's pretty simple. It can be done with basic tools. So this is a project you guys can do at home. Now we're going to box all the way back, leave a little bit of room for suspension travel, and go all the way out the back. So we're using our engine and transmission down in between the frame rails to see where our transmission mount lines are. Now the good news is we know the engine's going to fit because essentially it's our engine mounts that we use on stage 1 with the Mercury Marauder engine. The problem here is that these are factory and they're rubber, and the aftermarket doesn't really support a Mercury Marauder mount. They have Cobra mounts, so we're going to have to switch to a Cobra mount later on. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Now the upper control arm mounts came off pretty easily, but the lowers were a bear. They're about a quarter-inch thick. We moved this project forward. It allows us to do things like mount our custom fuel tank. This tank came from Rick's Hot Rod Shops, the Rick's Tank division, and it's a custom-made stainless steel fuel cell that was made based on the measurements that we emailed from those guys. So the sheet metal swap makes even more sense. Now this would be a great project for you guys to do at home if you've got a Mazda and you want to turn it into the more popular and to some better-looking Ford Ranger. Now we can always do a salvage yard swap. There's plenty of Ford Rangers in the junkyards, but we may end up in the same position as with our Mazda fenders and a little bit of body work to do. So we went online to LMC Trucks website, went through their catalogs, picked out some parts, and here's what we got. We started out with brand new sheet metal Ford Ranger fenders, and we need to absorb impact on a collision, and it's quite strong. There's some obvious differences between a replacement fender and the original parts that are taken off. We reused the mounting hardware for the headlight lights from the old ones, such as these spring steel headlight mounting clips. They go in from the back side and hold the headlights in, but they can be accessed from the top. Sometimes it takes some special.
Okay, cool.